Miami. Good evening. My name is Emily Mello, and I'm Director of Education here at the Miami Art Museum, and I'm very pleased to introduce tonight's program. I know many of you have had a chance to take a peek at Kimsooja, a needlewoman, and I know you'll spend more time following this talk. Kimsooja, a needlewoman, consists of 8 synchronized videos projected at large scale depicting the bustling center of a major world city, including Cairo, Delhi, Lagos, London, Mexico City, New York, Shanghai, and Tokyo. Also on view are 2 closely related works by Kimsooja, a needlewoman, Kitakyushu, and a laundrywoman, Yamuna River. The work of Kimsooja has been exhibited internationally since the 1990s. Solo exhibitions have been presented at important venues, including PS1 MoMA in New York, the Crystal Palace of the Reina Sofia in Madrid, the Institute of Contemporary Art in Tokyo, the Center for Contemporary Art in Kitakyushu, and the Museum Kunstpalast of Düsseldorf, among others. She has participated in numerous international biennial exhibitions, including those of Venice, Sao Paulo, Istanbul, Gwangju, Busan, Sydney, Valencia, Thessaloniki, and Moscow. The exhibition is supported by MAM's annual exhibition fund, and we'd also like to thank Rex Goliath for providing the wine for this evening's reception. We're very pleased tonight to be able to hear from Kimsooja, and the show was curated by MAM Associate Curator René Morales, who will be guiding the conversation. And René's had a long-standing interest in where artists engage in ideas related to urbanism and globalism. And this exhibition, among many entry points into the work, that is a major one. And you can read his essay in our gallery notes. I also just wanted to alert you to a few other programs that we will have in conjunction with the exhibition, including one that engages those ideas of urbanism, and particularly in one city that is the subject of a needlewoman, Lagos. Lagos Cool House, a film will be shown here August 18th, which is a documentary about the city of Lagos through the perspective of the architect and urban theorist Rem Koolhaas. Another entry point that we'll be exploring includes the idea of movement and stillness and the kind of mind-body meditative and interesting mind-body awareness that you can find when you are looking at these works. I hope that you think about engaging in them in that way, and we will have several Miami-based artists engaging both families on second Saturdays in July 14th in a stillness and movement workshop from at 3 p.m. during Family Saturdays from 1 to 4, as well as adults will have an ability to kind of think about how Kimsooja interacts with these cities and these environments through a stillness and movement workshop on July 28th from 2 to 3:30. So please look ahead for those events. But tonight we are very happy to welcome Kimsooja and to hear this wonderful conversation that I know you all enjoy with René Morales. So please help me in welcoming her now.
Excuse me. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Can everyone hear me well? Okay. Please, if you have any trouble hearing, please speak up, let us know. Well, thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much, Suja, for being here tonight and for sharing your beautiful work with us. I hope you've all had a chance to have a look at the installation. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about the works on view and also go into where the work came from, some of the earlier works that the work developed from, as well as the kind of work that developed after these projects were done. let's start with, excuse me.
While René is trying to
Sorry.
figure out,
Trying to
thank
turn
you
this
very
thing
much for coming to my talk and my opening tonight. I'm really happy to meet Miami audiences and to introduce my very important body of work, which is the basis of my thoughts to develop in the years to come. And also, René was great curator who really made such an effort to make this wonderful installation. And I really thanks for René's invitation and Miami Art Museum. Also, thanks to everybody who worked for my show. It was really my pleasure to be here. Thanks.
Great. Well, one thing about the installation that is subtle and yet important is that I believe you always show this work with these cities in this particular order. Is that right? Always?
Yes.
Or?
Actually, it is chronological that I performed from Tokyo, Shanghai, Delhi, New York, and then Lagos, Mexico City, Lagos, then Cairo, and
then Mexico City.
Yeah,
right.
London. So this piece was actually commissioned by CCA Kitakyushu. And when I was invited to do a piece, I didn't really have a clear idea, but I was thinking I will do a performative piece. And I knew that I will do one performance in the city and another performance in the nature. That's how I started this project. And when I was thinking initially, I was thinking maybe I would do a walking performance. So I was walking around Tokyo for a couple of hours to find the right moment and energy. But I couldn't find it. But when I arrived to Shibuya, which is really packed, busy street with hundreds of thousands of people coming and going, I was totally overwhelmed, and I had a certain kind of inner scream of silence, and I had to stop there. I stopped there, and I completely was planted that moment, that place. So from that moment, I also realized the meaning of walking that allowed me to stop and aware my body relationship to the flow of the city and the people around me. So I set up the camera with the camera person, and I started standing still. That actually defines my body against the crowd. And in the beginning, it was very difficult to resist all these energies coming towards me. And I was very vulnerable standing there in the middle of the street. But in the middle of the performance, I found the center, and I was very focused and keep my body in stillness. And then also had to learn how to breathe and how to keep my body in stillness to create a certain kind of barometer of the scene. While I was doing this performance, I was also, in a way, wrapping and embracing all the people coming and going in my body and mind, as if I were a bundle, which I've been doing for the last couple of decades. And almost at the end of performance, I was totally overwhelmed, but at the same time touched and felt happiness looking at all the humanities and seeing the horizon of the waves of people coming towards me. And I saw the bright light coming behind the horizon. So it was almost like enlightenment experience, and I was almost smiling, looking at the people beyond the scene and looking at the whole humanity in this world. So it was really special experience for me. So since then, I decided to do this performance in different continents around the world, and I thought I would really like to meet every single person in the world. Yeah. That's how I actually picked all the metropolises around the world.
Tell us a little bit more about that. What went into your decisions of these specific cities?
Well, first of all, I also wanted to meet so many people so that I could really embrace them all in me, and as if I'm wrapping them. But also I had this idea of signifying my body as a symbolic needle. Since early 80s, I've been doing sewing works a lot, and then it evolved into symbolic needle in the first video. But in this particular video, I consider my body as a barometer of different society, different economics and economies, and also culture, even fashion or geography. So in a way, I wanted to show and reveal the reality of the world. And that's how I picked the metropolises in different geography around the world.
And you were able to find places of really incredible density. And it just creates such a strong effect in terms of that dichotomy between the absolute stillness of your person and this kind of constant movement of the city around you. And it really sets into relief, I think, the individual within this ocean of humanity, this within society. And that relief becomes sharper still when you go to places like Delhi, right?
Yes, each city has very unique kind of context and also reactions. People reacted really differently. For example, in Tokyo, I think it's the social space people want to keep in between individuals. They wouldn't look at me even during the whole performances, as if I'm not there. So at the end of performance, when I see the video again, it seems my body is in a way erased by the crowds with time, and also my body looks almost like transparent, as if I'm not there. That was very, very interesting and unreal experience for me. But when I was in Shanghai or Delhi, everyone was so curious, and they would look back and talk, and in Delhi, even people would ride bicycles or rickshaw. They would just stop in front of me and then stare at me for a few minutes and then leave, try to figure out who I am, what I'm doing. So it really shows also different pace of the society, depending on the economies. Also the multicultural society, more multicultural society has, in a way, less interest to the other, in a way. So more homogeneous society showed more interest to the other and stared at me and reacted more interestingly.
That's so
like
interesting.
Lagos, like almost everybody who stand in front of me stared at me from the beginning till the end. So we were doing kind of similar performance.
Yeah, it creates a very different video.
It was very lovely.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
This is Lagos here.
Yeah.
And
we took a photo together at the end.
And I skipped over Cairo here.
Cairo was also very interesting because it's a Muslim society and women's appearance, especially Asian women on the street, is quite unusual. And they were so curious and provocative. So there were people who actually was standing in front of me and do exactly what I was doing and staring at me. But also there was a woman who came in front of me and walked around my body, and she grabbed my hair and put like this. And there was another man who brought like a eau de cologne, like a spray, sprayed in front of me to evoke my attention. So there was many kind of provocative actions going on in this performance, which was not all shown, but you would see also, men and friends were meeting in front of me and kissing each other, shake hands, and so on. Yeah.
How, just out of curiosity, how heavily were these edited? How heavily were these edited? Were they edited?
Oh, no.
Were they very long? Did you take a lot of footage and then cut it down?
Well, I did performances like maximum 25 minutes or 30 minutes, because that's the limit I could stand still. But I cut one to another and with no editing. So this is real time with no editing. So it has more like importance in performative element.
Well, you mentioned the question of endurance. Did you find it very difficult to stand there and to be so still? I mean, it's kind of interesting to think of how the act of stillness can be so testing to someone, especially in the context of such crowdedness.
Yes, I just had to do it because that intense energy I had when I stood at that moment, it was just a moment of Zen, almost like it was like a moment of blade that you had to do it and that's it. So I had to learn by myself how to keep my body in stillness, so that I started breathing with my stomach to keep my shoulder in stillness, and also I had to be very focused and centered so that my body is not imbalanced, and also my gaze always had to have a perspective point, so that my eyes become like a needle point in a way. So that I kept vertical, horizontal, and central, inner balance to be able to keep my stillness. That was an interesting practice because I actually thought I would do a yoga after the performance in Delhi. But when I first went to yoga class, the first thing they were teaching was how to stand still and be grounded and be centered and focused. So it was very interesting.
Well, it's great to hear this. I think, to me, one of the really fundamental aspects of this work is how we, the visitors, the viewers, begin to really relate to that figure. We start to feel ourselves in her place, and hearing about your experiences in these places just kind of is helping to fill in these curiosities that we have as viewers.
Actually, some might feel that my appearance and presence as an obstacle because it is irresistible figure right in front of you that blocks your view. But at the same time, when you view it for a certain duration, you discover that you don't look at my back anymore. And in a way, you wear my body and you replace, my body is replaced by the audience's body so that audiences are viewing what I'm seeing in the street. So the reason why I put my body, not the face, but the backside is because I don't need to, and I don't want to reveal my identity, but I want it to be a medium in between the audience and the people in the street. So I am kind of, in a way, create a certain kind of void in the end, like a needle eye with a duration of time, so that allows people enter to my body.
Wonderful. Well, I'm sure in the question session, we'll have a lot of questions from people who are curious to hear more about these, the experience and what it was like, and even some of the more logistical questions of how it was carried out. But for now, if we could just move on to another piece. This one is a laundry woman, Yamuna River, India. First of all, this is a very special place. It's a very special waterway, is it not? Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what was happening outside of the view of the camera.
This laundry woman, Yamuna River, India piece was done right next to the cremation place in Delhi. I visited the cremation place just before, and I was looking for a site where I can perform and has the right energy. And I found this riverbank immediately and felt the energy, so I, started right away. And then what you see on the surface of the river floating and passing by my body is all like debris from cremation, the burnt bodies and also flowers and woods and so on. So I was contemplating in a way our own destiny and also praying for them, also purifying their body and spirit, but at the same time my own. So it was kind of a certain spiritual experience. Another unforgettable moment is in the middle of the performance, I realized that I was in total confusion whether the river is running or my body. And I was trying to wake up and feel the reality, but it was hard. And I was keep on questioning, is it the river or myself? Is it the river or myself? Keep on thinking of that. But at the end of the performance, I also realized that this confusion that came to me is because of the focus I had. The concentration was so much extreme and almost like a needle point that didn't allow any kind of references around the point. That's what I understood, the confusion I had, because there's no references of any kind of spatial or temporal references when there is no physicality, like a point, you know? So that was very interesting experience, and a question, you know, allowed me to make a further question on space, time, and our body, and life and death and destiny. So this type of question and awareness is, for me, the most important element I'm learning from my own performance, rather than as a result of it.
And there's another, as a viewer, I can tell you that there's another very strong element of confusion between, a spatial sense of confusion between sky and water. Often as I think through your work, I often think in terms of dichotomies and how and dualities, and how they fall apart. The individual and the crowd, movement, stillness, in this case, sky and water, nature, city, and in this work, the horizontal axis versus the vertical axis. So this work is called A Needlewoman Kitakyushu, is that right?
This was actually the first juxtaposition I made in Kitakyushu, one performance in Tokyo City and the laying down performance on a limestone mountain in Kitakyushu. Some people consider this as a Buddhistic kind of posture, and some like a Taoist. I agree to a certain degree, but also I see the inner structure of this is more like a crucifix. The central point that divides the sky and my body is located in a way, the central point that divides the sky and the earth, and also by looking towards the nature side. In a way, I divide between the world, the audience's side and the side of the nature. So there is a certain kind of a cross section created in this performance. As I can relate my earlier piece I did in the early 80s, I did also a number of cross-fix shaped sewn pieces, and also the sewing very much related to verticality and horizontality. So my also question on the structure of the world to figure out its verticality and horizontality, and so on. So we could discuss later about the sewing pieces, but also transcendent moment in this video.
And you bring this transition to the horizontal axis into the city with this work, right? A homeless woman.
Yes.
Which,
Although it
what
is-
city is this again?
Yes, it is also the same position, but in a very different context, which is city, and which is the place where people are supposed not to lie down, and also it's in the Muslim society. So it actually raised many different questions on human condition and the different society that we have, and also religious-based kind of cultural, political, and social condition they live. As you see, there are almost only men on the street. There is not so many women walking in the city.
Where is this?
In Cairo.
In Cairo.
And in a way, I was also raising questions, the condition of humanity, what am I asking for in this position? But depending on the society, it also answers different answers. This one, you might also see a certain kind of question of responsibility to human and to another person in a difficult condition.
That notion of, the same ideas of that relationship between the society and the individual that you explore in the A-channel installation with this work and with the next work that we're about to discuss. There's a greater specificity. As you said, it's more about this, the responsibility of society toward the individual. And that's an idea that is sharpened very much with this other project, A Beggar Woman.
So in a way, the Needle Woman was more questioning on humanity in general and my own existence. I would say more existential question, but it reveals the different society, different barometers and culture, all these, by putting myself as a kind of same axis of the space and time. But in the homeless woman, as title suggests, it is a homeless woman. I consider, even if it might be just a needle woman, laying down on the nature. So that title already suggests a certain kind of social context and engagement, I think. And also the Beggar Woman was done first in Mexico City, inspired by a beggar woman with her tiny body in the middle of a big kind of a plaza, asking money, and totally like a tiny little, almost like bird. I was so stunned and touched by her action, and I was also asking myself, what could it be to put myself in the lowest condition as a human being, so that it was more about my own question to experience the others as the lowest condition of human. So when I did this performance, I was also asking at the same time what I am asking for. Is it money, or am I asking for what I'm asking for? In the middle of the performance, there was interesting experience because all other cities in London, even Lagos, there was always people who gave me money. But only in Cairo, I didn't have any money or coin in my palm. which palm I consider as my botari, like bundle. The question starts and arise. One moment there was a man who put like fake money, like a cardboard piece, and then he would take away. But another moment, there was a moment I felt totally shocked. There was the living thing on my hand. It was a living, soft worm chicken, like a little chick on my cheek.
Wow.
I was so shocked because I could feel the feathers, I could feel the warmth and the feet, you know. I didn't know what to do, and I was questioning, should I continue or not? But I continued. And then the man actually took it away. I think it was more like playful, like a provocative action. But this action he did with fun, but I took it serious. For me, it was more about a question on life. I was asking, in a way, with the position asking money, but asking what I'm asking for. But this man gave me a question of life on my palm. That was really interesting, and really made me think further what all these performances I've been doing mean to me.
So let's talk about this piece, and perhaps we should end with this. We have a lot of work, but if that's okay with you.
We could do.
So this is a second iteration of a needle woman concept. These are 6 different cities. But they're also the whole project together works on a different level conceptually. Is that correct? So, first, let's talk about which cities there are in order.
The one on the left-hand side top part was Patan in Kathmandu Valley in Nepal, while the civil war was happening at the time, 2005 in February. And then the next one was of Jerusalem. And then the next one was Sana'a in Yemen, which I felt this society really has a conflict. But recently there was a lot of problems and violences and political actions going on. And then the one below is Jamena in Chad, which is known as one of the most poorest countries in the world. And then Rio in Brazil. And then the last one is Havana in Cuba. So after doing a series of 8-channel videos and performances, I learned the differences and difficulties in this global society. One could see so much different level of life, standard of life, and cultural, economical conditions, and political, religious conflicts. So from that moment, I started to do a series of performances in the cities that has conflicts and problems. So mostly that had economic issues or violence or civil war or political, cultural, religious conflicts in between cities and post-colonial issues.
So in a sense, the kind of ethical questions that you began to pursue with the works that we just discussed
more like
start to sharpen into
more social issues
social, political.
I've been aware of. But at the same time, the first 8-channel is in real time, but I decided to show this as a slow mode, which interestingly reduced the tension of the society, by slowing down the speed. So although all these cities has problems and so on, when the speed was reduced, all looks quite peaceful actually, and equally harmonized. So in the end, I wished also to suggest that it is a certain kind of sense of perception of time when we see the difficulties and pressure or conflicts. When we reduce the time, everything can be peaceful and also harmonized in this society. So that's another kind of perception I addressed.
And also, besides the relative level of political conflict or perhaps violence that these cities share in common, another thing they share in common is a certain restrictiveness in terms of mobility, in terms of travel, and yes, that slowing down of movement, I think, in a very subtle way, starts to speak about that.
Yeah. We believe we live in the global society and we can travel freely, but I really experienced the difficulty to travel all around the world doing these performances. Because of course, as a Korean, I could travel to Havana from New York, but I know the problems, and I couldn't travel directly, but through Mexico or Jamaica. So there was another thing, but also when I traveled to Sana'a, Yemen, and Jerusalem, if I come from Jerusalem to Sana'a, they wouldn't allow me to land. So I had to go from Yemen to Jerusalem, but there's still no direct flight, so I had to go through Amman. And then also I noticed a lot of violence and gunshots also in Kathmandu while civil war was happening. And so it was quite dangerous. And also in Brazil, when I was in the Rosina favela area, I also heard a lot of gunshots around us and so on. So it's kind of their casual kind of shots to do kind of communication, but also it was quite scary to see all these naked young boys carrying guns, and heard a lot of stories that young boys were killed. And my photographer who did some photos during the years, he said, "Oh, look at all these boys. I took these photos, but these boys are not existing anymore. They are all died and killed." So it was kind of very difficult travels. And so
that's really something that I appreciate about the work so much, that it's not about globalization or about our global condition, but in the making of the work, that global condition came out. It's kind of wired into the work at the level of its making. Less so much a frontal direct or an illustration of that condition, but a kind of a demonstration of the experience of that condition.
It was more about my own experience and to understand the world, to understand the reality of the world, rather than illustrating globalization. But it happened, and it shows the global status by choosing locality in a way, because I find globalism is all about locality, and each local kind of identity is so important and becoming more and more important than any other time because of this kind of globalization that also drives all other countries kind of homogeneous in a way in terms of cultural, economical status. But my work originally has a certain kind of a nomadic aspect, so I think that's how my work demonstrates also the global kind of status rather than I pursue a certain globalism.
So I guess before I turn over the proceedings to the audience for questions, I'll just reiterate that last duality, that last paradox about how the stronger globalization is felt throughout the world, the more important locality and specificity and the point of view of the individual from street level becomes. And I think these are things that we can talk about and we can tease out through discussion, but in this work you can really see how visual art is able to take something that complex and really make it felt and make it obvious, really, without even the need for all that discussion. I think this is really a paradigmatic piece in that sense. So.
Yes, what I pursue is actually totality of life and art, and without explanation. I want audience experience what I experience and know immediately without learning or being told. So it should be more immediate experience, I believe.
Well, thank you. We actually have many more slides of particularly older work. But, well, for one thing, I'm getting a little nervous about that the music of the salsa party next door will start to kick on in earnest at any moment. But perhaps we can bring out some of those other ideas through the questions. And keep in mind, again, that we have these images of older work. So, yes?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I think it's really interesting that we're having a salsa party, which is really kind of duplicating your experience of trying to be still and really listening while there's other things happening. So thank you. I'm enjoying that. But I wanted to, I have so many questions. The thing that really occurred to me is what do you think, what is the camera in the work? And what is the reaction, how is the reaction of the audience controlled, or how you kept safe, perhaps, because the camera was there? I assume it was clearly visible to the people who were coming before you. So could you talk about what the camera is theoretically in the work and how it's acted?
Yeah. Well, in this piece, actually, camera is my actual body and my actual eyes. But my body in the video is just a medium. It's not me, but it's a medium that shows the relationships between myself, the audiences, and the people in the street. So there's layers, different layers that exist in this work. As a camera, but actually I did another piece before this piece called Sewing into Walking in Istanbul, putting the camera on the street, taking all the people coming and going, considering my body as a camera as my body and the camera lens as my eyes. So in this video, I decided to take a camera more like a hidden body, but my body is in a way a certain symbolic medium rather than myself. That's why I didn't show my face or my identity. So different layers of kind of barriers in this video performance, I would say. And also another question was, where was another question? I'm sorry.
Maybe I see a hand in the back
yeah.
there.
I don't know if it answered. Yeah. Later, maybe we can talk a little bit.
I had a question about the needle movement as a metaphor. When I think of a needle, I think of it as being something that actually leads into things, but also as the needle, the eye of the needle, things passing through. Is that sort of, could you explain the metaphor a little bit more?
Yes, I think needle, as I contemplate and use and borrow a very interesting tool. It is basically, it's extents of your body and hands, but at the same time it has a certain duality as a masculinity and femininity in it. Also, it has a physical body, very sharp physical body, but at the same time, the void that is needle eye that allows threads passing through and go different dimensions. So all these interesting dualities allowed me to develop different ideas and expand it and broaden it. But my also original kind of interest lied a lot on this duality, yin and yang relationship in the world and nature, human being, and so on. So I've been always dealing with these issues of duality. So in a way, the needle is also a hermaphrodite that is at the same time femininity and masculinity.
There's also, I believe, something about the process of sewing and the temporal element of that and the kind of almost meditative element of that seems to relate.
What I also want to address is in this, actually this was from first video I made called Sewing into Walking, the first image that I signify my body as a symbolic needle. It was not intended to make as a video, but it was documentation of my daily life working process. While I was reviewing it in slow mode, I was stunned by the hidden process of needlework that was not shown in actual sewing pieces. Because usually if sewing piece leaves traces of threads, but sewing has a lot of performative element. And that allowed me to do a wrapping series and making bundles as well. And that performative element has a wrapping, circulative action between the surface of the cloth. The sewing is not just stitching, sewing is circulating action. A spiral circulating action that allows you to develop into temporal issues that allowed me to do wrappings and making bundle installations. But this video was also done, and I decided to do video works because I discovered this frame of video as another type of wrapping practice. So while I was wrapping with the bed covers, with the like used clothing, so what I'm wrapping mostly was the presence of bodies in a way, the immateriality of human being and humanity. But in video frame, I could also wrap the reality of human being and the reality of the world with the immateriality of the wrapping method, which is camera lens, and also which is a video frame. So that's how I do, and the video work for me is not the same motivation. It was not came from same motivation of other video artists, and I wasn't interested in making imageries, but mostly interested in wrapping the world. So
in a way,
in
a
a
video.
way, yes, it is wrapping, but in a way it is also unwrapping. It is folding and unfolding the reality and the world and people. So it's two also dual kind of practice I'm doing. One materialistic work and the other immaterialistic work as a video. So these two kind of yin and yang relationship has been always parallelly developed.
I see. So, in a sense, the video becomes a way of wrapping this moment in time,
Right.
this segment
Exactly.
of time, and then when one watches it, it sort of unwraps this moment that
And
has
also
been contained.
every moment is kind of unfolded, unwrapped of the world.
So one last question, perhaps, or maybe two, since I see two hands. Two last questions. Yes.
Yes, I was wondering, as a viewer, I know how I would be impacted, but if I were watching this in 3D, how would that change both your approach and my viewer's approach?
That's an interesting question. I should try that and see. Actually, personally, I don't have much experience with the 3D movies, so I cannot exactly tell how it would look, but I think it will definitely give more sense of reality to the viewer in a way. But at the same time, the viewers are in the most virtual reality at the same time. So I think it's very interesting also a question on duality that raised. I will think about it.
I'll note, though, that these works are kind of resolutely not very technically complex. These are not very high-end cameras. These are is that right? I mean, it's sort of like
we use a really like small 3cc camera, and for me the technology is not the most important element in this series, but that's why I took risk to find videographers from local cities, because experiencing the local people and learning their locality and culture was more interesting and more important for me in a way.
But it's really about the content of the work, the experience, and to me that feels refreshing these days when everything is HD. I'm talking about video art. Everything is HD and very complex. You have to have these,
Actually, now I am going back to film, 16mm film, which is more like an ancient kind of type of technology. And I totally fell in love with it, with its like analogical kind of a reaction, like sound, and as if I am working with a person. And I actually hate HDs. I can't watch this anymore. Because you focus on the technology rather than content. So there's few artists who uses high-end HD techniques, but I find they really lose their quality and content of their work since they use this high-end technology. It's too much technological. I think it depends. Technology itself is interesting. You know, you also learn a lot from technology itself, which you don't discover. Like I discovered my notion of sewing in relationship to my body in this video film, which I didn't expect.
So one last question, very, very briefly, yes.
Excuse me?
I have a question about the use of your body as a medium. I think one of the things that stresses me most about this very simple gesture is that it reveals so much about a particular place, which is doing something so simple. But I question the neutrality of it. I wonder, thinking more about your position and about the will to stay there, kind of resisting movement, made me think about your positioning, your literal positioning as a form of protest, maybe, because you're protesting, staying still and resisting that movement. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that position as a form of protest, if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I've been always not so interested in making things, and I'm still not interested in making. So I've been always trying to do my work without making, and maybe minimum way of making things. So this performance is also a lot about my criticism on performance practice. As I notice, like a performer as a predominant actor, I always felt that we can do something more meaningful and more critical without acting much, without doing much. That is also another basis of this kind of work. And I must say, my goal in a way is non-doing. And by non-doing, I wish to reach to the totality of the life and art. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. So we will be in the exhibition for